I'm just going to give everybody I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes, um, and then I'm going to get started. All right. Um, just because people, trying to log on, blah blah blah. So we'll just give them 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll get started. So just check in the meantime while we're waiting that I'm sharing my screen, so you should see two copies of the same thing, really. One is the actual paper, and then it's the solutions that you would have gotten as well. I'll explain everything in 2 minutes' time. So if you can't see my mock papers, they're the two versions of it. Maybe just refresh your screen. And then if you still can't see them, just unmute yourself or type something into the chat box, and I'll try and refresh it, so that everyone can see it. Just going to give them 1 or 2 more minutes. Okay, I'm going to get started, because you didn't come. You have plenty of other things going on in your lives. You don't need me to. Let's see, is there a message there? Just want to check a few times. uh, okay, so just yes, I'll explain everything in it. We'll Leisha, I won't be able to do a crash course on the urinary system. If you have a specific question within the urinary system, I'll certainly answer it, Leisha, but I won't be doing a crash course. I'm sorry about that. But if you have a specific question, um, I'll, please don't hesitate to ask me. All right, so let me introduce myself then first, and we'll get the show on the road. So, I just want to hide that for now because it'll distract me otherwise. Kudos to you all for taking the time out. Maybe I'll pin my own screen. Excuse me. Okay, so kudos to you all for taking the time out to do this class with me. Obviously, it's going through the mock exam. My name is Róisín, by the way, if you hadn't seen it or that already. So this afternoon, our goal is to review the mock exam, to review the marking scheme. So I would like you, if you have any specific comments, a particular question like Róisín, would you accept this answer? Would the examiners accept this? Please don't hesitate to either unmute yourself or pop your question into the chat box. I'll explain to you, I'm going to But I'll explain to you the system of answering your questions in a few moments. But first and foremost, I put together this mock paper. You will clearly see that they're not original questions. Some of them are my own original questions. But not they are. I've just kind of collated questions from all over the place to deliver this mock paper to you. I'm coming at it, as I said, from an examiner's point of view. So I am not only am I an examiner of Leaving Cert higher level biology, for in excess of 12 years, 13 years. I am also an advising examiner. So while I will correct a lot of student scripts this year, in addition to that, I correct your corrector's work. So I'm very much involved in quality control, so to make sure your examiners are correcting accurately. So as part of that role, I'm involved in actually constructing the marking scheme post the exam. So I'll be given a skeletal marking scheme, kind of a very rough document, and we decide then. I'm one of 15 advising examiners. And I suppose just to let you know, and I'm not telling you this to go, oh, aren't I great? Couldn't be further from the truth. It's I want to show you the expertise that I am talking to you with today. So in terms of seniority, I'm ranked number 5 in terms of out of the 15 advising examiners. So just to show you my experience, generally I govern the short questions for Leaving Cert higher level biology. So I'm very much involved in deciding the answers to be accepted within section A. That's generally it. We are expected to rotate from year to year. But for the last number of years, I've been working on the short questions. So just so when I say yay or nay to something, it's coming from a very experienced point of view, just so you're aware of that. All right. If you do have a specific question, so like I can't go through, Leisha, the full urinary system with you. However, what I could do is, let's say you have a specific question. Róisín, my teacher said this, that, or the other, or I don't understand why I wouldn't get or the marks for this particular question, or if I'm drawing a diagram, Róisín, what's the minimum number of labels? Anything like that. If you have a specific question, please don't ask me to give you my tips and my predictions. They could come from all over the paper. You all know at this stage the traditional layout of the paper. If it's a specific question, I will happily answer it. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. Let's look at the paper then. So you've all attempted this. Well, I'm guessing you have attempted this at this stage. I'm guessing you've attempted it all at this stage. What was I going to say to you? I'm sure you've all experienced how time rich you are in biology. So you don't really need to worry about the timing or the layout of the paper. However, I suppose a rough guide, this is just a rough guide, I would say 30 minutes roughly on section A, 30 minutes B, and then 120 minutes on section C of the paper. That's just a very rough guide. You can tweak that, but I'm sure you've all learnt, and my own students attempted this mock paper one Saturday afternoon, and they were after doing the whole paper and extra questions, and they had left in 1 hour and 50 minutes. So please, I would encourage you to stay the full time that's assigned. You know, that staying that couple of extra minutes could be the difference between the grade you want and the grade you get. So if you've misread a question, maybe staying that couple of minutes, you're like, oh shucks, oh I drew a cross section when I should have drawn a longitudinal section, and by taking the time to review it, you've now got back those 6 marks, and you could be a boundary grade, and that can get it back to you. So please take your time. And this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. I'm going to use all of the cliches this afternoon with you. There was something else I was going to say there. I don't know. Anyway, it'll come back to me, all of the different things oh yes. So if you do extra questions, and again, remember, I am coming from a very senior point of view when I tell you this. We are mandated, we are obliged to check every page of your script. So if you attempt extra questions, we are mandated to correct every word you write, and then you are marked on your best 5, your best 2, and your best 4. So just be aware of that. So I will go through the answers to section A. I'm not going to go through them now in detail because you've got the marking scheme there. If at the end of section A, I'm going to stop, you can unmute yourself. Remember, don't be nervous. Don't be embarrassed. Don't think I look stupid if I ask this question. Please unmute yourself. If you don't feel comfortable unmuting yourself, I'll just look at the chat box, see what questions are there, and then I will move on to section B. So I won't check any questions, or I won't take any questions initially till the end of section A. And then I'll do similarly at the end of section B, and similarly then at the end of each question within section C. I hope that's okay. So let's look at the marking scheme there. Again, if you have alternatives, you can absolutely speak to me about it. So identify the two constituents, that's fine. Explain how the structure of a lipid may be altered. So Fa stands for a fatty acid. A fatty acid can be replaced with a phosphate. There could be variations of that, so I just wrote that one. So for example, you can say you could have 2 fatty acids and a phosphate, or whereas a regular one has 3 fatty acids. Anything like that is absolutely fine. If you want to discuss an alternative one with me, please don't hesitate. Of course, an extension of that question, so we now know that structure is called a phospholipid. And an extension of that question could be, tell me where in the structure of a cell will you find a phospholipid? And you all know that you will find it in the cell membrane. One thing I want to reassure you all, I know, sitting my Leaving Cert while it is a dinosaur generation ago, it's still very vivid to me. I know the angst and the anxiety that many of you are experiencing at the moment. The one thing I would ask you to do is quell that emotional brain for the while you're here with me, because you are going to learn nothing if you say, oh, Róisín, I've so much to do. How will I just close that brain down and start absorbing it? These are, you'll pick up something new that will come up the day of your Leaving Cert that you didn't know before today. So a phospholipid will be located in the cell membrane. So vitamins can be divided into 2 categories. What are these 2 categories? Water soluble and fat soluble. Remember, you must know an example of both one water soluble and one fat soluble vitamin. And you must know a deficiency disorder associated with that named water soluble and named fat soluble vitamin. Again, you'll get a recording of this, so if I'm talking too fast for you and you're not able to get it all down, listen back, pause it. It will be available to you on Monday. So you must know your definition of a trace element. It's a mineral required in small amounts. If you wrote down in your marking scheme, instead of the word mineral, if you simply repeated the word element, if you wrote down an element required in small amounts, that will award you 0 marks. I'm being a bit sassy and crass now, but it's only tongue-in-cheek. The State Exams Commission will say we're not a charity. They will not give you half marks. So if you write down an element required in small amounts, all you are doing is repeating the word that's given in the question. so you won't be awarded the marks. So just be mindful of that. So a mineral required by a living organism is fine in small amounts. Don't forget to name a mineral. So if you just gave me a disorder here for part E, and you didn't name the mineral associated with it, well, they are linked. So if you didn't name the mineral, even though you had named a disorder, I don't know what mineral you're talking about, so that would have gone to 0 straight away. And then finally, state 2 roles of water in a living organism: good solvent, transport, medium for chemical reactions, temperature regulation. Involved, there is other. Listen, I could be writing all day. You could say Róisín was involved in chemical reactions or a participant in them. Okay. Can you say involved in photosynthesis? Absolutely. They are the specific kind of questions that I want to hear from you. If you have an alternative written down, you want to question it, please don't hesitate to do so. So that's the food question. Again, I can't predict your paper, but traditionally, and again, this thing of X number of questions come from unit 1, X number come from unit 2, X number come from, that's not factually correct. If it's in the syllabus and guidelines, it can be asked on the paper. The only thing you know about is the assessment modifications for Leaving Cert 2025. Tell you what experiments can be assessed in question 8, what experiments in question 9, what experiments in question 10. And of course, remember, while experiments are assessed in section B, they can also be thrown into section A and section C of the paper. So then we've got a series of ecology definitions in 2000. So you've got them all there. I think they are pretty self-explanatory. Now, again, if your teacher has given you an alternative and you want to discuss that with me, please don't hesitate. For example, students often query, Róisín, are you sure if I literally just wrote down the word soil there for D that I get full marks? Yes, I can assure you. If you want to put factors relating to the soil, that's fine, but soil was the key word there. And one thing I keep saying is, food chain, that definition was asked in 2000. Why did my pen chain? That definition was asked in 2023. It was part of the long ecology question. And my experience as an examiner, students, we didn't even as examiners know what John was looking for. By the way, John Loughlin is the most incredible man that writes your Leaving Cert biology paper. We didn't even have it correct. I was predicting it for 2024. It didn't come up in 2024. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see your definition of a food chain in 2025. So a series of ecology definitions. John has been writing the Leaving Cert biology paper since 2021. So you might notice a difference, slight difference in the style, the layout of the paper, pre and post 2021. It's because there's been a different author of the paper. John loves diagrams. You'll notice I've tried my best I was looking through my paper. I think on most pages, I've tried to include a diagram on it. I think I counted on last year's Leaving Cert paper. I think he didn't always have questions to do with the diagram, but in 2024 I think there was 22 diagrams put on the paper for you, so just something to be mindful of. Again, don't be panicking going, well, it was just there, they could be a distraction, things like that. Again, please, this is my marking scheme and it's very detailed. Again, you might say, Róisín, I was looking at the 2022 marking scheme and they didn't insist on red here. They insisted on just bone marrow. However, as John says in the front of his statement on his marking schemes can change from one year to the next, obviously still within the realms of the syllabus and guidelines. So in 2025, he might insist on red bone marrow. So there is, again, why is blood considered a tissue? It's just your definition of a tissue there. And then it's any blood disorder associated with it. Okay. And again, you've seen this now at this stage with your mock exams, you don't have coloured diagrams unlike junior cycle science. So they will be, again, you have to apologise then for the quality of my diagrams sometimes. They don't transfer terribly well when it goes to black and white, but John draws all of his own diagrams himself using his software. So they'll be of an exceptional quality. All right, so moving along, this is a fantastic question. There are a few things that I really want to bring to your attention here, and particularly part B, maybe part C, and part E. There's lots actually within this one. This is definitely identifying the technical nature of your biology exam. I know pre-2023, so I'm looking at part B here, wherein the cell does stage 1 occur. I know a lot of students used to come to me year after year and say, Róisín, my teacher said cytoplasm was okay for stage 1. Pre-2023, I always said refer to the 2008 question 5, where it says stage 1 occurs in the cytosol. What is cytosol? But then in 2023, there was an asterisk beside cytosol. So the only word they're accepting for stage 1 is cytosol. Yes, you do need to be able to define cytosol. Cytosol is your cytoplasm without your cell organelles. Again, forgive me, I suppose I will be very technical when technicality is needed, and otherwise I kind of am just a bit glib about it. So you might have said, name the cell organelle labeled A in the diagram above. So A is, I suppose, the singular. So it's obviously the singular is mitochondrion. I've written mitochondria. We are biology students. We are not Latin students. So saying the singular or the plural, it doesn't matter there. And you might say to me, Róisín, but in there was an asterisk beside it. They didn't penalise for mitochondrion versus mitochondria, and they can't be penalised, something like that. And you're saying, Róisín, what if the marking schemes change from one year to the next? That's not something which is applicable under that umbrella. Please, the letters ATP. Again, what do the letters ATP stand for? Adenosine triphosphate. Spelling doesn't matter as long as it's phonetically correct. So if you wrote down adenosine triphosphate, I would give you full marks for adenosine triphosphate. However, if any of you wrote down adenine instead of adenosine, and look out for that, you'll notice I underlined the SINE part of it. If you wrote down adenine triphosphate, that immediately goes to 0 marks. All right, so just be very cognizant about things like that. It's the same with the letters DNA. I don't know if I asked it here within it, but what do acid. Um, Sorry, I feel like I've lost my connection. No, I don't know. I hope I haven't. If I have a Noah, please, or any of my darlings that are used to me, please just reach out and let me know. I'm just going to stop sharing just in case I've lost any connections. And I'll reshare. Okay, it says I'm sharing my screen, so I hope everybody can see that I'm still sharing my screen. Again, refresh your screen, unmute. Don't have me sitting here talking blankly at you when this is about you. So just somebody unmute yourself if there's any technical issues at any stage. So, please, what is the role of NAD? There are lots of variations. One of my colleagues, we were setting the summer exam for fifth years, and she asked me, Róisín, is it okay to say variations of this? It picks up hydrogen ions. If anyone wrote down hydrogen without the ions part, unfortunately, you will be awarded 0 marks. Ions has to be in your answer. Or of course H plus, or protons, any of those. Okay. So again, I have to be very careful for you all and not predict things. And things like that, but I wouldn't be surprised. The definition of cell continuity is on your syllabus and guidelines. Cell division has been assessed 19 out of 20 years. I predicted it for 2023, but it didn't come up, so I do get my predictions wrong. But I wouldn't go into my Leaving Cert biology exam without knowing my definition of cell continuity. Again, there you go. What causes, when we lose control of the rate of mitosis, you've got cancer, and you would need to know at least 2 causes of cancer, if not 3 causes. My own students will know that 3 is the magic number. 3, everything revolves around 3. We mark in 3s. We mark in 3s. I encourage them to learn 3 description points for an experiment. I encourage 3 labels on a diagram. I encourage you to learn 3 examples. Anything revolves around 3. So again, makes sure that you read the question. So name the membrane formed in an animal cell. So did anyone write down a cell plate? Of course, if you did, why might you? Because you misread the question and you know the name of the membrane at the end of mitosis in a plant cell is called a cell plate, and you do need to know that, of course, as well. So, cellulose and chitin are 2 structural polysaccharides. That, of course, is true. Again, I would remind you all, you need to know your definition of a polysaccharide. It is more than 2 sugar units joined together, or it is many sugar units joined together. Either of those 2 definitions, they're correct. Anything other than those 2, and you will get 0 marks. Yeast is an example of a multicellular organism. Why is that false, Róisín? Because yeast are unicellular. Why a cytosine is an example of a purine base, Róisín? Why is that false? Because cytosine is an example of a pyrimidine base. It horrifies me that students would leave a true-false question blank. Last year there was a true-false question on the Leaving Cert. Why? You have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. So, even if you haven't a clue, guess it. pyrimidine, so cytosine and thymine are examples of your pyrimidine bases. Adenine and guanine are examples of your purine bases. So viruses are obligate parasites, that's true. Rhizoids in Rhizopus secrete enzymes for digestion, that is true. Red blood cells contain a nucleus at maturity, that is false, and as a result they often like to ask you, can a red blood cell undergo mitosis? No, it can't, because mitosis occurs in the nucleus of a cell. So you would need a nucleus in order to undergo mitosis, and red blood cells do not have one. And osmosis is exclusive to the movement of water molecules only. That, of course, is true. What was I going to say there? Please remember, again, reverting back to my magic number, 3. 3 is my magic number. So osmosis, you must have the word water in your definition of osmosis 3 times. So osmosis is the movement of water molecules from an area of high water concentration to an area of low water concentration across a selectively permeable membrane. So I said the word water 3 times. You're going to say to me, Róisín, my teacher has taught me semi-permeable. I can't guarantee you'll get full marks for saying the word semi-permeable, because if you put semi into the syllabus and guidelines, you'll get 0 returns. The word that they use in the syllabus and guidelines and the correct term to use is selectively permeable. So just be mindful of that. So again, we've got a question on the skin. So indicate on the diagram with an X the tissue that is composed of lipids. Again, this is far superior here. It's got a nice coloured image on it, but that, of course, is adipose tissue there. So that's where you would locate it. Indicate, so the erector muscle, the sweat gland, and the epidermis there then for that. And again, that's your sweat gland. No, it can't be the sweat duct. There's your sweat duct. And of course, your sweat gland would be an example of an exocrine gland. Why is it an example of an exocrine gland, Róisín? Because it has a duct or a tube coming out of it. Love this question. List 2 structures in the skin which are involved in temperature regulation. So the sweat gland, the blood vessels, and the hair. And make sure, with regards to, as per the 2015, the short question, make sure that you know your definitions or your description of vasoconstriction or vasodilation. And make sure that you know your definition of piloerection. This is with respect to the blood vessels. And this is with respect to the hairs. And please don't say in vasoconstriction or vasodilation that the blood vessels move. I got roasted and toasted and burnt alive by my colleagues in the SEC once upon a time, many years ago, for saying blood vessels move closer to the surface or blood vessels move away from the surface. My sassy colleague said, Róisín, I didn't know blood vessels were after getting legs and starting to move. So we've got our definition of homeostasis, and there again, if you have any questions or queries about that, don't hesitate to reach out to me. What conclusion can be drawn about the mouse based on the data given? So they are endotherms, or they are, if you wanted to describe it, or describe. So Róisín, what did I have to say to get or described? So an animal that has the ability to maintain an internal body temperature. Please note the word I've written, and I've underlined the word animal. I don't know if any of you have looked at the Leaving Cert paper from last year. One of the short questions was collection of terms. So, for example, and I was the governor of this question. So you were asked about endotherm and ectotherm. And you were asked to define basically both of them. And so many students did not know, or they didn't include in their answer animal. They might have got, like, so many students came back with their appeals and said, I should have gotten the definition, the marks for the definition here for endotherm or ectotherm. Because this is the definition that's in my textbook. And I doubt very much that's the definition in your textbook, because they had written a living organism that has the ability to maintain an internal body temperature. No, it had to be the word animal. Okay, so please, and that was terribly answered. So again, could be John looks at all of the data from last year. It's all electronically generated now. He's not just depending on the feedback of his examiners. It's all immediately. He will know every question, and what students did really well in, what they did badly in, and if for him, it will immediately maybe set alarm bells that he needs to assess that again next year. Okay, so that is the end of section A of the paper. I would like to be at the end of section B by 5:30, and that will give me an hour then for section C. So let's see how I'm getting on with any questions. Please feel free to unmute yourself or to ask. Let's see. Have I got any questions here? So many different. Is this going to be available? Yes. It is going, so anyone that has registered for this, by the way, it is going to, you will get whatever email address you've registered via, you will get a email with this recording on Monday. I don't know what time. Yes, you are getting a recording of this, because not everybody here knows what Moodle is. Okay. Right. Oh, wow, we've got a lot of questions here. Wow, let's see. Oh, crikey. Okay. So, will that you, okay. So will there be a recording? Yes, Sean, there is a recording of, for niche is role an organism plays in an ecosystem or food chain, or should we not say, which doesn't matter, Leisha. The key word, Leisha, is role. The role, the job, the function of an organism. After that, it's irrelevant. With definitions, can you use the, no, McDermott, you can't use the actual word which is given. I think I've explained that to you. So elements, so Leisha, or McDermott, sorry. So for your definition, unfortunately, you would get 0 marks. Okay. So Róisín, depending upon the marking scheme, it can just say the role or the job of an organism. You mightn't even need in an ecosystem. Leisha, quantitative, do you have to say measuring population, or you can say counting the number of? Doesn't matter, Leisha. You can say measuring the population. You'd have to say, or counting the number of an animal or a plant or a species. Either of those, but you'd have to say counting the number of. Okay. What if you write needed instead of required? Oh, absolutely fine. Can you say water flows and in and out of a cell to maintain the shape? Molly, I know that's the function of water. Yes, it has a role in providing shape. Yes, that's fine. Will they accept osteomalate as a deficiency disorder for calcium? Yes, they absolutely will, Sarah. So for Yes, I'm just going to say yes. Both of those, Sarah, are absolutely fine. Could you say that water? No. Oh, yes, and Aileen, I should have said that. Um, I would stick to the more traditional ones, Aileen. So I would say, and I would definitely not say water keeps us hydrated or water prevents dehydration. They will get you 0 marks. Um, I had the exact same teacher for my, she said, no, no, I wouldn't. Thank you, Oisín, for helping me out there, because some people, do you have to say sharing, Rook? Can you just say all living things and their environment? Oh, that's for one of the definition. Um, I would, the official one there is sharing resources. I'd have to think about that. And I don't have the time to think about it here now. So, hopefully if I would go with the official one, sharing resources. No, L. McDermott. No, that's John Doyle is the gentleman who governs that question, and he is very strict on that. It has to be you can't say interactions between organisms and their environment. Environment is a key word. Do you have to say sharing? Yes, great. Thanks, Lauren. Is urea accepted for transported in blood? Should we give an example where red bone? No, you don't need an example of where red bone marrow is found. Is urea accepted for transported in blood? I think it would be. I think it would be. I'm not too sure, Leisha, what specific question you're talking about, but how specific are they when it comes to using synonyms? And so, for example, if you said the region in which for habitat instead of the place, yeah, this is. I'm going to say to you, try and use the exact words that your teacher has given to you, or the definition in the textbook or whatever. It really is the judgment of the examiner. It is really goes from examiner to examiner. Again, it could need to go to a repeal, and it could be accepted upon an appeal. But I would say try and use the exact terminology. Uh, Leukemia as a blood disorder. Yes, Sarah, leukemia is fine. It can also be vitamin and is mostly, I'd say, calcium deficient is one, cause not the main one. So no, no, Lauren, just or whoever was Sarah, again, just to let you know that osteomalacia, osteoporosis are absolutely acceptable for lack of vitamin D. To just um yes, glucose and amino acids transported in the blood. John Lachlan is the gentleman who writes your Leaving Cert biology exam, Matthew. Um, Salts, yes, that's fine. Hi, Mirab. Yes, you can say salts are transported in the blood. That's fine. Maybe, but that's cancer. I don't know, just sticky. Yeah, again, no, uh, a disorder of blood cells, no, leukemia is fine. It is fine. I would Leisha, I would encourage you to say a large amount of energy. John, so he's even higher than the chief examiner, John Lachlan. He's the examination and assessment manager. He writes your Leaving Cert. So just, yes, David Whelan, your answer is fine. Can you say combines with electrons and protons? Can you say adenosine triphosphate? Yes, that's fine. S. Boland. Do you have to say hydrogen? Nisha, it would have to be hydrogen for, I'm not sure for part F what you're talking about. I think it's the formation of NADH. Do you have to, it has to be hydrogen ions. You can't just say hydrogen. Yes, you do need to know. Unfortunately, S. Kennedy, it's in the syllabus and guidelines. You need to know what the letters NAD stand for. You don't need to know what NADH stands for, but officially, according to the syllabus, and it was asked on a deferred paper. So NAD stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Sorry, NAD stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and you also need to know what NADP stands for, and that's nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. You can't, Lauren, just say electrons. It has to be electrons and protons. Thanks, Jamesy. Do you have to say yes? No, you have to say both. I hope we've answered this question for you. You have to say both. Will we be emailed? You should have been emailed the marking scheme because you were supposed to have been able to self correct this. If not, I don't know. I'm not involved in the IT part of it. Again, reach out through wherever you've registered. Thank you. The marking scheme is already the function. Can you write down how yes, you can, Mirab. Just write down how NADH is formed. Thank you. We learned that it was an indentation gets deeper until the cell splits rather than a membrane. Is that wrong? No, Aileen, that's not wrong. That's it can be referred to as, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but the cleavage furrow is what you've said there is fine. It's just the way the question was phrased, or that's how the question can be phrased. Frequently in a lot of past paper questions, you will see that it says name the membrane that is formed at the end of mitosis. But what you've described there is absolutely fine, but it didn't make any difference to the question. What do we need to know about plant reproduction? That's also how I learned it, but I guess it's part of the membrane. Okay, if you answered them all. Yes, as Michelle, as I mentioned earlier, we are obliged to mark everything, and you are marked on your best 5 questions. Your everything, and we mark it. So remember, I hope, is hair follicle okay for, and is it okay? I put pylori. Yes, I'll have to just check, Leisha, in a second. No, you can't, Mirhab, say that the erector muscle has a role in temperature regulation. No. Could you get any marks for just saying no? You can't get any marks for saying erection, like even half marks, Oisín, no. Could you leave out the and appropriate? Maintaining a constant. Yes, that's fine, Aileen. If you said a lizard is an ectotherm as well, no, that's absolutely fine, Nicole. What's the definition of an ectotherm, Chloe? I'll answer that for you now. Oh no, I wouldn't go. Don't, please, whoever gave the definition there of being a cold-blooded animal, that is not that won't get you any marks, unfortunately. Chloe, I'll give you the definition of an ectotherm now. An organism, again, Nicole, be careful, it wouldn't get you any marks. It has to be an animal whose body temperature is influenced by their environment or is dependent on their environment. But unfortunately, Nicole, that definition won't get you the marks because an organism isn't sufficient for an animal. No, Alexandra, there is no place where you'll get the statistics that is, what is that? Privileged information, or it's just happening that I know about. How long is this class lengthwise? Corey, officially it's 2 hours. If you need to leave at any stage, it is recorded, and I hopefully will be finished within the 2 hours. Can any experiments be asked in section? I thought you just had to learn the ones. No. Sophie, Any experiment, again, so Sophie, for example, they might ask you about the photosynthesis experiment in a photosynthesis long question. They might ask you about the respiration experiment in a respiration long question. They might ask you about the effect of exercise on the breathing rate or the heart rate if they did a long question or a short question. So it is officially 2 hours, just to let you know. Could you say that water is a component of body fluids and that it allows movement through membranes? Again, that would be a judgment one, Isabel. I wouldn't be great on that. If I write hypothesis is an educated guess based upon an observation, that would be accepted, Jamesy. In what scenarios can the word organism, for example, in the ecology questions? Yes. I suppose it has to be, you'd have to give me a particular scenario where where an organism can be accepted. Generally in ecology, the word organism or living organism should be should be accepted. But listen, look at organisms should be accepted for all of the ecology ones. Chloe, those definitions are dreamy. No, please don't write down, Lauren. Constrict, okay? You're repeating the word that's given in the question. So please, so vasoconstriction is the constricting of blood vessels. No. That will get you 0 marks because all you're doing is repeating the word in the question. So just, Chloe, they're beautiful. Can you confirm? So Mairead, again, you can watch back the recording and it will have it. So the word osmosis must be in it 3 times. The movement of water molecules from an area of high water concentration to an area of low water concentration. Across a selectively permeable membrane. Joanne, it is not possible to give too long of a question and lose marks. I suppose that in section C, that's not possible. In section A and section B, I suppose if you write misinformation, and that can result in you losing or not being awarded the marks, as you know about cancelling. Again, Jay Ryan, to let you know, you'll get an email on Monday with a recording to this. All right, I'm going to go back. I wanted to try and get section B done. So let's go and see, can I get that done with you? And I'll try and get through more questions with you. So keep your messages coming. I'll try and get through as many as possible. So you've got I'm sure your teachers have all gone through you. I'm not here to do that with you. I'm sure your teachers will have all gone through the experiments that can be assessed in question 8, the experiments that can be assessed in question 9, and the experiments that can be assessed in question 10. So here you'll see, be careful. John Loughlin also writes the junior cycle science exam. So he's been kind of extrapolating little bits of information from the junior cycle science exam because he knows a lot of you will have developed skills there. He wants to see, are you able to analyze a little bit of data? So he gives you results from your ecosystem study. Again, describe how the frequency data would have been obtained. Now, this is a very brief description of it. So you would have written, I'm sure, other bits. I got lazy. I was writing this out. You can, if you have other queries or questions on it, or other alternatives, please don't hesitate to reach out and to ask me about it. Again, would you read the question? Again, just please be mindful. So this is an ecology experiment. However, the ecology experiments can also be examined as part of the ecology long question, which they have done in recent years. And you were asked, I think it was 2023, in the ecology long question, to describe the percentage frequency, I think, or it was the percentage cover. So please read the question. Are they asking me for the percentage frequency method, or are they asking me for the percentage cover method? Remember, the odd time, the very odd time there can be a mistake on your Leaving Cert biology paper. The mistake in 2006 was they asked you to construct an identification key. You don't have to be able to construct an identification key. So if you left it even blank in 2006, you got full marks. The very odd time there might be an error. However, you do need to be able to use an identification key, and it's basically a series of steps, and you use that series of steps to help you to identify the plant or the animal. So in this particular one, I asked you to use the steps involved. And you can see I even included the steps you take in order to identify that plant. I is Betula. Or if you had written down there birch, that is absolutely fine. So please, again, just listen. Hopefully I will answer your questions and I will go through them. Identify each of the food types, A, B, and C. So A is lipids, B is proteins, C is starch. If you put down carbohydrates, no. I was looking specifically, in the laboratory, you use iodine to test for starch. And I would insist, I don't know, but I've instructed all of my students for the test for a lipid that you insist on a permanent translucent spot, because we know in every experiment we have a control. What's the purpose of a control? A control is for comparison with the results. That when you put your control, which is distilled water or water, on brown paper, it too forms a translucent spot, but that translucent spot disappears. So I personally would insist on permanent translucent spot. If you had written down transparent instead of translucent there, unfortunately, you will get 0 marks. So again, then we move on to question 9. So controls, so a selectively permeable membrane, it controls the movement of molecules from one location to another based on size. Again, there are words, Alicia, to that effect. So you could say controls or prevents on what explain the term selectively permeable, or it regulates the movement of molecules from one location to another. But there again is the official description of it. Visking, tubing, jellies, potatoes, eggs. Somebody said, Róisín, my teacher didn't allow gummy bears for when I wrote it down in my exam. Again, I suppose officially we say visking tubing or dialysis tubing, jellies, potatoes, or eggs. That would be one, whereas a bunch of examiners would discuss it and see what we say. Again, I'm basing mine on the use of catalase and celery, but you might have done starch and iodine, or sorry, starch. That's fine as well, but the ones I'm using is catalase and celery. If you did not say here the volume of foam per unit of time, because the question asked you for the rate, so you must have volume of foam or the amount of foam. Please don't say the amount of bubbles. You are getting this mixed up with the photosynthesis experiment. It must be foam. It must be suds. I myself hate the word froth, but it has been accepted in the past. I can't guarantee it'll be accepted in 2026, but I would go with the official terminology. So it's the volume of foam per unit time. And name a factor that was kept constant during the experiment, pH and the pH buffer. Again, no more bubbles were produced. I'm being nice to you there with saying no more bubbles were produced. They could insist, I can't guarantee it, but they could insist that you say no more CO2 bubbles produced, or no more CO2 bubbles were visible. Something like that. But definitely you could lose marks, Róisín, if you wrote down no more oxygen bubbles produced, because that you're getting your experiments mixed up. Sterilized all the equipment in advance, or any other valid. Again, there is lots of them. If you want to check with me, Róisín, is mine right? That's absolutely okay. No problem at all. The one tip that I'll give you all, so you all know what was so unusual about last year's experiment questions. What was unusual about them was students were cut out, because all three of the experiment questions asked you to write out the method for the experiment. I would always say 3 decent solid points. They don't need to be in order. Well, last year on the scheme, they didn't need to be in order, even though they were written in order for convenience. The one insider trading or insider tip I would give you is that there was if you looked at all of the if you looked at the marking scheme for last year's experiments, you'll notice that there was 3 of the 9 or 3 of the 12 marks were going for mentioning a safety step that you took. No students, very few of them anyway, wrote down that I wore a lab coat or I tied my hair back. The examiner doesn't know. I don't know any of you. I don't know whether you have long hair or short hair. So say I tied my hair back, etc., etc. So please, it was the handiest 3 marks that you could get. That might be a message to John this year that they didn't know about their safety. Students are not aware of safety in the laboratory, so he might address it or include it again this year for yourself. So just be aware of that. So the heart dissection then comes up on question 10. How did I distinguish the front from the back of the heart? An alternative there would have been, if the front has the coronary vessels, the back does not have them. That's absolutely fine as well. Again, when I underline key words there, so cut at the base of the aorta, I suppose, again, upon reflection, I might have insisted on, which they did in the past when they asked this, cut at the base of the aorta with a scalpel. So please note those for yourself. And again, my own students have been asking me recently, Róisín, how do I, like when I'm talking about my heart dissection, do I talk about it as I see it in front of me, or how my teacher has taught me about the theory of it being my own heart? So it's not as you look at it in front of you, it's the opposite of how you look at it in front of you. It's as if it was in your own heart. So please refer to it as the right and the left as you would when you are labeling it in a textbook, etc., etc. And then, of course, the last time this experiment was asked was in 2021. A question very similar to this was asked. So again, making sure that you know that leaf yeast are an indicator of air quality. The more leaf yeasts that are present, the better the air quality. So this is an indicator. So the 10 colonies tells you that the air in that area is really good, because leaf yeast will only grow when the air quality is really good. In a busy, no, that should be a busy urban setting. Forgive me. That was clearly one of my own questions. In a busy urban setting, the air quality is low because there's a large amount of pollution. So there won't be a lot of leaf yeast growing. That question was asked something similar to that in 2021. So please wouldn't be surprised. Something is telling me to have a look over that to make sure that you know or you understand it. I am going through these quite fast now because there was a huge amount of questions there in the last thing. So I'll go through a couple of the long questions, and I'll then review a few more of the queries and questions you have. Keep typing them in because we would like, it's too difficult sustaining longer than 2 hours. You'll all be exhausted. So traditionally then there is the first or one of the sorry, that's my, I can close that, or well, I'll just swap over to my other marking scheme. What was I going to say to you? Oh yes, so traditionally one or the first long question is ecology. Lauren, statistically ecology is the most popular question on the paper. About 96 to 98% of students attempt the ecology question. There is no question mandatory. So if all of you are stressed out over your genetics, that's okay. It is the least popular question on the paper. Only 22% of students will attempt the ecology question, or sorry, the genetics question. So no question is mandatory. Again, if you drew, so a lot of students drew the when they're drawing a pyramid of numbers, they draw this. Okay. Unfortunately, if you drew this one here and not this one here, as I stated in my scheme, it must be stepped, not slanted. I don't know. I don't know. I don't use a textbook. I don't know anything about them. But some students say in my textbook, Róisín, it looks like that. Well, in the textbook, that might be a pyramid of biomass. Again, I don't know if that's what they're talking about. It's not a pyramid of numbers. And if that is the pyramid of numbers for a normal pyramid, well, then that, of course, is wrong. One of my students that I teach, some of you would know this student because you're in her class, and I teach her in the part-time school, and her teacher said to her, before you go into your Leaving Cert biology exam, you should all attempt the deferred paper from the previous year. She said to me, Róisín, is that a good or a bad piece of advice? And I told her that's a great piece of advice. And on last year's deferred paper, there was a question on pyramids of numbers. So this is a normal or a typical pyramid of numbers. And yes, so again, if you have any queries or questions on that. List 3 methods of waste minimization. Again, will you please read the question? I've got a post-it on the wall in my room, and it says RTQ. What does that post-it stand, or what does those 3 letters stand for? They stand for read the question. So many of my students, the size of the human population is controlled by a number of factors. List these 2 factors. A lot of students forgot to underline the word human. They started talking about the factors that affect the population of your ecosystem. So they were talking about like soil temperature, soil pH. No, they are very different to the human factors. So war, famine, disease, contraception, improvements in education, improvements in medicine. Please don't think these are the only 4. Róisín, if you have any other ones and you want to mention them, please go for it, or if you want to check that, it's fine. Again, please just let me know. So waste management is a matter of growing concern. Outline any 2 problems with domestic waste going to landfill. Again, I've just given you a couple. I would be broken if I was to write them all out for you. No, you don't need. There's other possible ones. If you're in doubt about your one, please just drop it into the chat box there and I'll discuss it. One of my students messaged me and they said, Róisín, do I need to know an example of waste produced and disposed by agriculture and fisheries and forestries? No, I screenshotted the syllabus and guidelines for her and I told her it's just one from agriculture or fisheries or forestry. And then, of course, give me a use of microorganisms. So please don't waste your time. Pick one from agriculture, fisheries, or forestry, and then but don't. And it can be others to this. I've just picked slurry. I've just picked fishing. I've just picked the heads and the tails and the tree clippings. But if your teacher has given you another one and you want to mention that, absolutely not a bother. Again, traditionally, a question does appear quite frequently on the nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen and the carbon cycle were asked in 2023. There was nothing on them in 2024. You were simply asked for 12 marks in 2023 to describe the events of the nitrogen cycle and for 12 marks to describe the events of the carbon cycle. As an examiner, as an advising examiner, I can assure you that if you drew a diagram of the events of the nitrogen cycle, it got you 12 marks. If you drew a diagram of the events of the nitrogen cycle or the carbon cycle, it got you 12 marks. The frustrating thing with the nitrogen cycle questions is this nitrogen cycle question is very different to other nitrogen cycle questions. But there are, I think the answers are this pretty okay. But again, if you have any queries or questions with regards to it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. The infamous genetics question. Again, you'll notice I've been putting diagrams on all of my pages just to to be consistent with the way that John sets and writes your paper. The one thing I was saying, I did a crash course on genetic theory with my own students last Saturday morning. And the one thing I was saying, if you have a mental block about genetics and all of that, that's okay. That's no problem. You just go, I've invested the time, it's just not for me. The one thing I will say in all of John's papers that he has written since 2021, all of his deferred papers since 2021, they have all had something to do with the structure of a DNA. So even if you could master the structure of DNA, go through it for yourself. So being able to label. So if I just point out to you, what have I just put a circle around, which was asked in 2023? I've put a circle around a nucleotide of DNA. Again, somebody asked me what's a subunit of RNA called. A subunit of RNA is called a nucleotide also. What do the letters DNA stand for? They stand for deoxyribonucleic acid. One of my students, as I said, my teacher said, Róisín, if I write down deoxyribonucleic acid, I get the marks. No, you won't, because I was the governor of that question and I insisted not to award students the marks if they wrote down deoxyribonucleic acid, because that's not what it stands for. You could be asked in 2022, you were asked to draw a nucleotide of DNA. And again, my colleagues came to me and they were like, Róisín, why would my students only have gotten 3 out of 6 marks for drawing their diagram of a nucleotide of DNA? The one thing in the nucleotide, because they drew it like this, let me show you how they drew it. So that's what they drew. So the diagram was worth 6 marks and they got 3 out of 6. My colleagues were wondering, why did the candidate not get 6 out of 6 for it? For the 6 out of 6, it needed to be at an angle. We are not artists, so this is not an art exam. So if you drew that, you now got 6 out of 6. And then you got a subsequent 3 marks for labeling the 3 constituents of a nucleotide. Of course, the DNA structure is double helix, and the nitrogen bases are held together by hydrogen bonds. And you would need to know that there are 2 hydrogen bonds, as you can see here, holding adenine and thymine together, and there are 3 hydrogen bonds holding guanine and cytosine. Yes, you need to know what the letters A, T, G, and C stand for. Again, I am a human talking syllabus and guidelines or exam paper. So if it's a question that comes out of my mouth, it is a question that you need to know for your Leaving Cert Biology exam. If you wanted me to label the different constituents, so Róisín, what is this? This is the phosphate. This is the sugar deoxyribose. So the sugar deoxyribose is in deoxyribonucleic acid. So the letters DNA stand for deoxyribonucleic acid, but the sugar is deoxyribose. Then you could say, so in this case here, it doesn't matter which way you label them, but let's say you label this the phosphate. You always, the deoxyribose is in the middle. And if you gave an example, so if you said adenine, guanine, cytosine, or thymine, or you just said it is a nitrogen or a nitrogenous base, that is absolutely fine. There you go. This is a case in point of how an experiment, which is according to the assessment arrangements, is assigned to question 8, and it is also now can appear in the long question. So please don't just assume experiments are for the experiment section. They can be incorporated into the long or the short questions. So the isolation of DNA from a plant tissue such as a kiwi is examinable under question 8 in section B, and here we have it as part of the long questions. So there you go. I think that's pretty much denatures the enzymes, stops the destruction. Again, there might be variations of that you want to discuss with me. And of course, your infamous sex-linked cross. I think I've stolen this from last year's deferred paper. Again, I have all of my own students working profusely on sex-linked crosses. That's what I feel will be examinable this year. I could be so wrong. But the weekend or the night before, apart from your dihybrid non-linked, will you please look over your sex-linked? Remember, please don't say to me, Róisín, genetics is difficult when it comes to the definitions. They're just like every other chapter. You just got to learn off your definitions. Let me advise you as an examiner, if you attempt the question, we will try to the best of our ability to find you marks if we can within it. So try your best, work your way through it. There is the solutions to it. And hopefully you can ask me any questions associated. So traditionally, I can't say for certain, that when you go to the short questions, and historically there has been a long question on ecology, followed by a long question on genetics, then followed by a long question, photosynthesis, respiration. They are kind of 3 recurring. Could get it all wrong. There might be no genetic cross. And there was a recent year where there was no genetic cross on the genetics question. Nothing is mandatory. Literally nothing is mandatory. What they did in 2021 and 2022, the genetics part C was to do with the dreamy cell division. So I'll do one more question. I'll do what's this one? This is photosynthesis. Yes, photosynthesis. So this is so a lot of students say to me, Róisín, can I leave out my plant structure and transport? I'm like, why do you want to leave out plant structure and transport? Because it it's not difficult. You've like the questions are, the majority of them are very student friendly. They are very well laid out because it's boring. Well, never let boring be an excuse to leave out something. Never let boring get in the way of you and the future that you want. So you could get a question on photosynthesis, and you could be banking on a question on photosynthesis, and you could get all excited, and then all of a sudden there's a bit thrown in on plant structure and transport at the end of it. So please, my piece of advice to you is do not leave out plant structure and transport. What happened to my darlings in 2021, I advised them make sure they study plant structure and transport. They got a question on the digestive system. They were rubbing their hands going, yes, I've got a question on the digestive system. I've got this locked in. And then the max they could get was 36 out of 60 because part C was about plant structure and transport and they hadn't studied it. So don't let that be you because it's boring. So please let me offer you one piece of advice. Traditionally, every year on the paper, you are asked for 6 marks, which is 1.5%, to write out a balanced chemical equation for either photosynthesis or respiration. Róisín, I get the two of them mixed up in my head. What am I going to do? I'm telling you what you're going to do. You learn one. I don't care which of it you learn. And the other one is simply the reverse of it. So let's say the easier one perhaps is to learn I don't care, photosynthesis, respiration, let's say. So the question asks you in the exam for photosynthesis, you write down the one for respiration. Róisín, have you lost your marbles? Because that's not what the question asks for. So now you've learned that one. That's the only one you've learnt. You're not going to get it confused because all you do now is you rewrite it, putting this first, putting the 6CO2 plus the 6H2O. You don't need the energy, gives you C6H12O6 plus 6O2. If you left out as much as one number, okay, if you left out just one, you are down to 3 out of 6. If you left out 2 numbers, you were down to 0 out of 6. If you got all of your numbers right, but left out 1 letter, you are down to 3 out of 6. Leave out a number and a letter, you are down to 0 out of 6. You shouldn't leave out the words light and chlorophyll. If you left out the words light and chlorophyll, depending upon the marking scheme, you would immediately be down to 0 out of 6. Again, I am just the messenger. Don't shoot me. I am just delivering what you'd rather me tell you now than find out the hard way when you get your script to view next August or September. So this information is factually correct, and just telling you the marking scheme. This could be the way in which it could happen for you. Again, it depends upon a variety of different things. As John says, if you read the introduction to a marking scheme, he says it's a working document over 26 days. A lot of you have no idea the hours and hours. We will spend about 10 days from the 10th of June until the 21st of June just mulling over answers before we even meet our examiners and discuss even our answers further. So, please, I would, if you were struggling with plant structure and transport, I would advise you all to make sure that you look at your transpiration. Hence the reason I've put this particular question on. Making sure, let me offer you a piece of advice. There are 5 scientists that you need to know for Leaving Cert Biology. Who are the 5 scientists, Róisín? There are 2 in the transpiration stream, and there are 3 in genetics. There is Mendel, there is Darwin, and Wallace. Róisín, what about Watson and Crick that discovered DNA and RNA? While your teacher might have told you about them because they are frightfully important scientists, it is not on your syllabus and guidelines that you need to know their names. So they are the names of the 5 scientists. If you decide you're not doing genetics, you only need to know the names of 2 scientists. So just a little bit of information for you. Right, I am going to go back over now to the questions because I'm sure there is a flood of them. Okay, where do I start with some of these questions? Wow. Right, let's go. Wow, let's see. Oh gosh, let's see. I won't get through all of these. Okay, right. Okay, I'm going to have to just start going through some of these. S. Kennedy for testing for the presence of ethanol. S, just because that's again is going to be applicable to the question. So if so my question said name the reagents. So you have to know potassium iodide and sodium hypochlorite. If they said name a test or name the reagents, then you could put in the iodoform test. But the way I phrased it, S. Kennedy, it specifically wanted the reagents. However, I think that I might not have been very fair to you because I think according to the syllabus and guidelines, it's one or the other, but I'd have to check that up for you. But I'm going to say I'd like you to know the names of the reagents. Fat is absolutely okay for a lipid. Leisha, that's fine. Your definition of a positive lipid test, translucent stain when dry, accepted. That's fine. S. Boland, selectively permeable, a barrier between a low and a high concentration of water molecules. I wouldn't. I'd insist on something to do with it's the barrier part is fine. The part is that it's not your I kind of want more. I think it's too vague. Sorry. Does the wording food type mean that you give the specific? Because I thought it implied general type. If you wrote, now I wrote this question myself. My English might have been too poor there. But there could be, but I suppose the official answer we were looking for, you know that. Why are you using starch in the laboratory? You're using to test for starch. I suppose based on the phrasing, L. McDermott, I'd have to give you polysaccharides there. Can you say controls what substances? Yes, Aileen, that's fine. Could you say the height of foam? You absolutely could, Molly, but it would have to be the height of foam per unit time or after 2 minutes. Thanks, El McDermott. You said after 2 minutes is absolutely dreamy. Is foam and water like the same thing, Sinead? No, they are not. It's the volume of foam per unit time. I said the volume of foam bubbles produced. Leisha, that's dreamy. Could you say effervescence ceased? Absolutely, Aileen. For selectively permeable, our teacher only allows certain things to pass through it. That's absolutely fine. N. R. M. Nowska. Forgive me if I've pronounced your name incorrectly. That's absolutely fine. Can you say, Leisha, the lime water stops bubbling? I'd accept that. Could you say to keep the ethanol away from an open flame? Yep, absolutely. El McDermott, could you say something generic? You sure could. Sarvani, forgive me again. You can say something generic. I always tell them to tie their hair back. En Paritian, yes, you can say just use just say I used a pH buffer. I suppose I'd like you to say use the exact number, but to the best of my knowledge, a generic pH. What would be a good safety step for every experiment? Erin, like I said, I got all of my students to say I tied my hair back, I wore gloves, I wore a lab coat, I made sure there was no trip hazards in the vicinity of my desk. So tie my hair back, wear a lab coat. When you're talking, I don't know. For the method, if you had a required for the experiment and they were correct, but an extra detail was, would they? No, Isabel, no, they would not penalize you. Does the heart produce hydrochloric acid by any chance? Not that I am aware of. What's your definition? Chloe, your definition of osmoregulation. I'm going to, again, Chloe, I'm going to say it now. I'll say it slowly. Again, you can note the time on this recording. Well, it says, well, it hasn't been recording for over 2 hours, but the osmoregulation is the maintenance of a constant water environment in a living organism. So I'll say it again, Chloe. It's osmoregulation is the maintenance of a constant water environment in a living organism. Could you say you made an incision with a scalpel down along? No, Saravani. You can't say that. Whatever year it was that the heart dissection was last asked, you had to say at the base or at the exit of the pulmonary artery or the aorta. But the way you've said it, unfortunately, Saravani, would get you no marks. Yes, Aileen, you have to talk about the front and the back of the heart to get the full marks for how do you distinguish between the front and the back. I would encourage us all to be very positive to each other here, please. We're not here to knock each other down. We're here to build each other up. Do you recommend studying all of the experiments, or is it safe just to study question 8 and question 9? Molly, again, the only thing question 8 and question 9 experiments. I suppose we do have, maybe there's a question, Molly, that comes up in fungi in the long questions that you're planning on doing. They could link in the fungi experiment there, Molly, or the plant structure, the dicot. So I suppose knowing 8 and 9, but I'm just telling you they can come up in the long experiments as well. No, en partian, thank you for that one. I should have said that. Please don't. My boss roasted and toasted me and cooked me 1 year when we were talking about this at conference. He said the thing he understands a key is it's something that unlocks the door. It didn't tell me that it could identify plants and animals. So you must in partian say that it's an identification key. So can you say ivy for the leaf yeast? No, you can't. The only 2 plants you can use in that one is ash or sycamore, no ivy. Great. Thank you for answering those. Again, I'm not going to Moriarty. That's up to you. Why is grass biggest, Leisha? If you specified one field, and no, Leisha, just take it that when it comes to grass, it's not one big field. You're talking about the blades of grass, so there's always thousands of blades of grass. Ecology is the thing with plants and all, plants and animals. Erin, no, they're not all normal pyramids. We have inverted pyramids as well, or a distorted pyramid, so they're not all normal. Absolutely, Mirab. That's a fine problem with waste disposal. Pollution of water sources, Mark, you'll have to maybe elaborate. Yeah, oh, sorry, is that to do with landfills, Mark? Yes, it seeps into landfills. That's absolutely no. PCAL for would birth rates and death rates be accepted? No, PCAL it wouldn't. Absolutely. You can give a specific, Saravani, you can give a specific example. And Daniel, that's fine as well. Mirhab, that's fine for the one about for use of microorganisms. Can you say decomposers breakdown? Absolutely. KL, that's absolutely fine. What are the three main components of carbon? I always get two or out of the three of them. Carbon's always right, which is handy. So what would you say? You could say, oh, here's the three things you can say. Carbon dioxide is removed through photosynthesis. It's given into the atmosphere through respiration. So photosynthesis, respiration, and decomposition. They would be three main features of the carbon cycle. So photosynthesis removes it, carbon or respiration, and decomposition and the burning of fossil fuels, they all contribute. So there's four. Oh, what are the main three? Sorry, I've read it wrong. Did I, Sinead? So the three constituents of carbohydrates is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Maybe I read it wrong. I don't know, Oisin, about hydrogen and zinc. Please be careful about what you write there. The ordinary course does not have anything to do with the periodic table. Can diagrams, for example, like the eye diagram, be drawn? Yes. Thank you. There's another great question. No, no diagram needs to be drawn on the graph paper. It's an absolute waste of time, that graph paper. No graphs. If you're asked to sketch a graph, you don't need to use it. It is regular paper is fine, such as the predator prey graph. It doesn't need to be drawn on graph paper either. Again, pen, the only thing you need to bring into your exam is a blue or a black pen. Um, um, I had one girl tell me that her teacher breaks her pencils if she uses a pencil. All of your scripts are scanned in. They don't know if a if you've used pen or pencil. So there's no you're not going to lose any marks for drawing your questions in. Please can be respectful to each other on this platform. So again, KL, um, we don't need to accurately plot graphs here, KL. That's a great question. That is not a skill required of us at Leaving Cert biology. We are only able to sketch it. So just to sketch, the same with the pH graphs, nothing like that. You don't need to be able to properly draw graphs. It is just a sketch. Yes, Sarah, you can write the genetic crosses like yours instead of mine. I like that way, Sarah, but a lot of teachers teach it the way you've written and you will get full marks. Aylin? For the definition, a dominant gene inhibits a recessive gene from being expressed. Ailin, I'm going to repeat what I'm not being sassy with you now, Ailin, but you have to look at that definition now, and based on what I have taught you this evening. So, Ailin, you said there a dominant gene inhibits a recessive gene or a recessive allele from being expressed. A gene inhibits a recessive allele from being expressed. I suppose if we take out the word dominant there, a gene which, yes, sorry, Ailin, forgive me. Yes, if we take out, so you had repeated the word that was given in the question. However, if I take out that word, the rest of it still makes sense. Then Ailin, so yes, that makes absolute sense. Thank you. The order is just for neatness, or also the reason why I, Sarah, deliver it as XS, XX, capital N, lowercase n, is because, Sarah, it allows students to identify the gender easily when the two letters are together. Róisín, I don't know if the definition of biology, it's on the syllabus and guidelines, so it has equal chance of coming up just like the rest of them. Exactly, Sinead, never say never. I just want to, I'm not here to, I think it's a very dodgy time we're in. We have quite a short period. I don't want anyone to be upset. And I think it's very important to have a positive outlook here. Nisha, no, you won't get any marks for saying pondweed instead of Elodia. Pondweed was acceptable at junior cycle, but not at leaving cert. Again, nothing is mandatory. If you leave out plants, can you still get your max grade? Again, I would like to say that nothing is mandatory, okay? Leisha, what are the top things that are answered badly last year we should keep an eye out for? Oh gosh, Leisha. I suppose, oh, the one thing, Leisha, I will tell you just that it pops into the top of my head. The description of the predator-prey graph. It was asked on the ecology question. The description of the predator-prey graph. It was, you had to describe the shape of it. Students did not get it. No students got it right, Leisha. So I would say look back at last year's marking scheme for the answer to that. It could make an appearance. Leisha, if you don't draw the uterus muscle wall outside of the endometrium, will you lose the marks? Yes, I think, Leisha, that's a key part to it. Matthew, absolutely, I encourage pen over pencil. Jay Donnelly, you drawing a diagram, draw a diagram if you like. Should you always draw one? I would encourage you, all of my students, to draw a diagram, yes. Leisha, yeah, for the two, again, the embryonic and the chorionic, is absolutely fine, Leisha, for your 2 placentas. Leisha, my chorionic is technically not on the syllabus, so you'll notice that they say the embryonic and the uterine tissue, or the embryonic and the uterine tissue. That is acceptable. Your teacher is giving you a very detailed answer, but officially it is not on the syllabus and guidelines. But again, the one I've given you is officially not on the syllabus. It's too advanced, but we are both absolutely correct. So embryonic and the uterine tissue, or as I said, I have the embryonic, yes, and the uterine tissue. If you've left out any points in your explanation, yes, very good, Daniel. I agree with that. For what do you say? My teacher gave a big paragraph and a diagram. So what do you say for endospore formation? So when conditions, so this is Leisha, am I able to draw a diagram straight onto, you absolutely are, Sinead. You absolutely are able to draw a diagram straight onto the answer booklet. For Leisha, for endospore formation. So what do you write down in endospore formation, Leisha? I'm going to pop up my answer from my own notes. You can take a screenshot of this, Leisha, or you can take a screenshot of this, Leisha, or you can look back at the recording later on. Sorry, no, where is it? Endospore formation, Leisha. So there is, Leisha, 4 bullet points. If you're asked to describe endospore formation, you can see it here where my mouse is hovering over. If you want to look back at this recording later on, or you want to take a screenshot of it or a photograph of it, please do it now. I'll give you 5 seconds there. Okay. Right, let's try. I'll get one more done because we're coming. Does the experiment method have no? Mark, if you don't want to be here, guys, and you don't want to if you're not here for biology, will you please leave? There's no need to block up the chat box with inappropriate messages or stuff that's not relevant to biology. So please just leave. It's clearly not of any benefit to you this evening. So does the experiment method have to make sense? No, it doesn't have to make sense. And there can be just random points. It doesn't have to be sequential. So just to be aware of that. Okay, let's move on and let's get another question done this evening. Okay, so I've done, so we have another long question. Again, this is the nervous system that you see here. Let's put up the marking scheme beside it. So I've got a question on the nervous system there for you. Again, there is only 2 deficiency disorders of the nervous system which you need, Parkinson's or paralysis. So you can't have any other deficiency disorder other than those two for yourselves. So if your teacher has taught you about multiple sclerosis or motor neurons disease, unfortunately, you can't include either of those. Again, you've got all of the different parts associated with the nervous system there. And then, of course, my money is, if I was to suggest a question or a sense to know about, I would definitely suggest to know about the ear. And that would be the sense that I would learn about this year. Again, traditionally, every year on the paper, there is a question about the about human reproduction. Traditionally, John could decide to leave it out this year, but I have included a question for you on the female reproductive system. The question there, yes, I would definitely put in the uterine muscle wall. If you didn't have that in, you would get 0 marks. Remember, all of the diagrams can be drawn in pen. You don't need to draw them in pencil. My fear is with pencil that it fades when it is being scanned in. No diagrams need to be drawn on the graph paper, but if you decide to draw them on the graph paper, that's absolutely fine. But please tell the examiner where you are doing it. As you said, the ones I want to go with, as I said, is the embryonic and the uterine tissue, as people have been asking the questions. I know teachers give alternatives, but they are the ones I would like you to know about. So again, there are alternatives, but they are the ones that I would like you to know about. Again, for fertilization, a word equation is absolutely fine. It covers all the key points. Otherwise, you'd have to put in things like egg being haploid. The N stands for being haploid. And the sperm being haploid and produces a diploid zygote. Again, there's lots of key terms. So, for example, IVF is fusion of the gametes outside of the living organism. Maybe your teacher said fusion of gametes on a sterile nutrient medium. That's absolutely fine. But again, they are the key words which are associated with it. I've included a question with you on the skeleton. Again, yes, you could be asked to label all of the different bones. There is a question on the skeleton. Again, please, I can't remember who it was, but somebody asked me the question. Don't repeat the word that's given in the question in your answer. So explain the term antagonistic muscle pair. So, don't say it's a pair of muscles working together, because you haven't qualified the word pair. So you say it is two muscles working together with opposite effect. Again, with regards to enzymes, how do you denature an enzyme? Please note that you would say, I heated it above 60 degrees. Saying I heated it to 60 degrees, no would be the answer. Heating it above 60 degrees or if you said, in my case, I just get my students to say heating to 100 degrees Celsius. Again, you might have a different application of immobilized enzymes within industry, but whatever application you know, you make sure you know the enzyme, you know the substrate, and you know the product. And that is a very different to the immobilized enzyme experiment. An awful lot of students think you write down the enzyme that you use in the experiment. No, you don't, which is sucrase. You write down whatever industrial application and the corresponding enzyme, substrate, and product for yourself there. There's the infamous plant responses question. Students say, Róisín, if I leave out my plants, you still have plenty of choice on the paper, but I can't guarantee And of course, we've got our plant reproduction there. And again, you're basically, all you needed to do for this particular question here, all you needed to do was describe what is happening in the graph. So just describe the graph. You didn't really need to know anything or understand anything about it. So, question on human defense. Okay, there was a question that snuck in there that wasn't on the syllabus and guidelines. So if your teacher hasn't done that, you're like, oh, why has my teacher not got that done? Because it is not within the scope of the syllabus and guidelines, but I just threw it in there so that if anyone was wondering what were the answers. So like I said to you, you could get a fungi long question. The fungi experiment could be included within it. So if you could, I would try learn the experiments for question 10, but that you might be associated with a topic that you are banking on. So please just be mindful of that. And of course, I've given you an infamous movement of molecules question there for you. And that one there, why is osmosis classified as a special case of diffusion? Please learn off that answer as I have given it to you. Students try and put it into their own words, but they make a mess of it. And then, of course, there is a question on the kidney. I think the kidney, if I could be stood corrected, but the kidney did come up last in 2022. It hasn't made an appearance since. So could I get a question on it? It is possible. Writing down PCT instead of proximal convoluted tubule and writing down DCT instead of distal convoluted tubule is absolutely fine. Okay, so that is, I know I kind of got quite rushed there at the end, but we are coming to the end of it. I'm just going to check if there's any last questions, and then I am going to finish up with you all. Sean, would you recommend, Sean, your writing bullet points, Sean, is an examiner's dream. You make it easier to correct, Sean, and you also make it there's less risk of an examiner missing out on one of the pieces of information. So I would encourage bullet points all of the time. Yeah, again, Leisha, please don't lose sleep over it if you don't get over the urinary system. You've got other topics as well. I suppose it's one of the ones I would tell my students to look back over, but please don't lose sleep over it. As I said, it came up, so it might not come up again. You don't, if it's the one you're not an expert on, it's okay. How does the placenta produce progesterone? Don't worry, LOC. You don't need to worry about the placenta producing progesterone, not within the realms of the syllabus and guidelines. Joseph Cronin, do you recommend studying more? At the moment, I'm doing one subject a day and one biology a week. Oh gosh, Joseph, how long is a piece of string? I'm not trying to, I don't know is the answer to that one, Joseph. It's very difficult. Everyone is different. Depends where you are, etc. If you say a function instead of effect of is that okay? Two muscles working together with opposite. Oh yes, sorry, Nisha. That is absolutely fine, Nisha. Thank you. For plant sexual reproduction, is it okay to put N or 2N? Because sometimes they say, oh no, Leisha, another great question. N is universally recognized in biology for haploid. 2N is absolutely universally recognized for diploid. So writing down N and 2N, you do not need to, are absolutely fine instead of haploid and diploid. Yes, Alan. You write down, Alan. If it's to do with the nervous system, please, Alan, write down spinal cord. Never write down spine. Okay? So always, if it's to do, don't use the word spine ever, really. You say vertebrae in the skeleton. You say spinal cord. Yeah, please say spinal cord. For naming a factor that causes an enzyme, could you say no, Amelia? You can't say an unsuitable temperature, Amelia. You have to say heating above 60 degrees Celsius. An unsuitable temperature, unfortunately, is too vague. For the skeleton, was ball and socket joint also a possible answer for the last part? Was that, Alexandra? Did I put that as synovial joint? I would go with synovial joint over ball and socket. Again, that would be one that we'd have to discuss at conference. So I'm not sure. I'd have to look that one. No, you'd have to include convoluted, Nisha. No, you have to include convoluted, please, Nisha. If you write tube instead of tubule, oh no, that's fine. That's fine. So writing down tube instead of tubule, that's fine. So if you wrote down proximal convoluted tube, distal convoluted tube, I'd give you full marks. What's the difference between proximal and distal convoluted tubule? Proximal is connected to the Bowman's capsule, and at the other end it's connected to the loop of Henle. The distal convoluted tubule comes after the loop of Henle and heads straight to the collecting duct. I hope that makes sense. Jamesy, I hope you found this helpful. No, Leisha, you can't lose marks for being overly specific. Okay. Very good, Leisha. If it's out in the brackets, it's not relevant. Will they ignore? Yes, they will ignore they'll just, we say we ignore the rubbish. I hope do you think the endocrine system? Leisha, again, it has come up for the last 2 years, Leisha. I don't know. I don't know. I hope you've found this useful. Let me see if there's any other questions. I know there was some in the Q&A box. I don't know if I've had the opportunity to answer these as well. Yeah, yeah. Would amino acids count as a food transport? It would, absolutely. It would. And how many questions would you recommend to answer? Again, like you said, it's a great one. Purely the required amount or one extra for each question. You have loads of time, so go with one extra for each of the different sections. If you're able to and you can, answer as much of it as possible. Okay, I think I hope you found that useful. Wishing you there's been some fantastic questions there. And I hope you found it useful, and thank you, everybody. Take care, everybody. Well done.